Three quarters that absolutely no one will care about. That is so frustrating.
Gets there, knocks it down to the front. He gets it back. Goldie. Some poetry in slow motion from Goldie to Lucky. Don't you want to be him? He's got 9.
Welcome back to Further North, everybody. Another Gather Round to review. Gather Round sucks. As a North fan, I hate Gather Round so much. It looks fun there, but we always lose by a lot of points. We've got Chief back. He'll calm me down. He'll settle my nerves. How are you, mate? How are you feeling after our Gather Round game against the Gold Coast?
Look, it's a magnificent day here in Melbourne. I'm just looking out across the northeastern suburbs, and it's just such a beautiful day, but there's just a dark shadow falling over the people who wear blue and white. It's a frustrating day. I agree with you when it comes to Gather Round. I had a look at the ladder, the Gather Round ladder. These are the things that the people just run out of things to post, obviously, on Instagram. But one of them is the Gather Round ladder. And we were at the bottom by such a long way, at a percentage of 45. So we're getting done by double every single match. So we don't like Gather Round.
No. Well, look, maybe if we played it in weather like this, we would have won the game. According to Clarkson, anyway, which we'll get into in a second. I saw a couple of quotes from him after the game, which we got some thoughts on. But look, let's have a chat about the game, just how it all sort of played out. Now, I'm a bit conflicted on this one, and I'll tell you why. Because at the time, the last quarter fade out, and then sort of late in the third, absolutely disappointing. But the almost 3 quarters of football we played, I was really, really happy with. And I think this is why I feel so flat, and this is also why we don't podcast on the day of the game, is because since then, I've sort of felt better about the game, that it's like, if we could do that for 4 quarters, which I know I've been saying for a while, but it feels like 4 out of the 5 games we've played this year, we have been able to do almost a game of football performance, right? And I feel like it is a step, but then I hate the fact that the media and all your mates and that sort of stuff are just going to, because no one's going to watch this game, right? So I'm going to walk into work on Tuesday morning and be like, yeah, we lost by 50 points and everyone thinks we suck, but no one saw the good effort we put in. So how do you sort of feel about this result and the game as a whole, 18 hours or 12 hours after the game?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. I actually watched the first half whilst I was putting together my new barbecue, and I was
the good half.
Thinking, yeah, it was. I think the first part of the third quarter was probably the best, though. Like, we really played well there.
Second quarter run as well.
Yes, for sure. And so I was actually really happy with how we went in the first half, but I had to do something in the second half. So I went away and I was just looking at the scores, and obviously I came back and watched it. There is nothing worse than knowing that you lost by a lot and then having to come back and watch the replay. Obviously, for this podcast, I had to come back and watch the replay. I was going to do it anyway, but that hurt really, really badly. Yep. Particularly when you get halfway through, or actually further, with 5 minutes to go in the third, we were ahead, and things were looking very, very positive. And then to drop the bundle, we'll obviously talk about it, is super frustrating. But I've still there's positives and negatives, as we always have. I am probably maybe more negative than you, given what you've kind of said just a few moments ago. So, yeah, I think we'll have a good chat about it because, yeah, I'm pretty flat about this one.
Well, that's fair. Look, I've also got a lot of positives and negatives, and maybe I'm trying to bundle it up in my head as a slightly more positive thing. But I think, when we look at the result, doesn't tell the story of the game, and I think that going into teams that are going to be weaker, and we can look at the Blues next week, or we'll go up against Port, or when we play the Bombers and Richmond and West Coast, I really think that type of football will hold up well, and I think that's what I've sort of been convinced of at the start of the year is, yeah, I know and I don't feel like I'm accepting the loss because I was so angry, and to fade out like that in the fourth, which we'll come to. But, 3 quarters like that, if we're not playing a team as good as the Gold Coast, and I hate admitting how good they are because I don't like the Gold Coast, but, the physicality of that team, it's almost like in the third quarter or through the middle of the game, let's go the second and third quarter, they knew to conserve, to save their energy a little bit, to go in the last quarter when we were going balls to the wall for the second and the third quarter, which were the most fun, except for the end of the third, where we got the lead back. And is it game management and that sort of stuff? So just to tell a tale of the game here, I mean, quarter time, 25-37. I thought we held our own enough, but I think we should have been ahead, or we at least had the chances to be ahead in that game. I feel like we missed some easy ones, but the classic butchering of the ball from us was well on display in that first quarter. And then we sort of go to the second quarter and we turn it up. And, the first few minutes of the quarter, it looks the same sort of story. And then all of a sudden we start getting on the score sheet. Dersma gets involved. Larky kicks a goal. Sheasel gets involved. And all of a sudden we're back right in the game. And it was really, really exciting. So sort of tell me your views on that first half of football before we get into the second half.
You know what? One thing that sticks out to me throughout the whole game, but definitely the first half, is a lot of people will want to talk about ball movement because, and I'll talk about this later in the podcast, but what stuck out was it was literally just our pressure rating went way
That's
way
right.
up.
Yeah, it was huge.
We went from 140 in the first quarter. Now, people out there, the boffins out there will love how they work out the pressure rating. I won't talk about it now because it's a podcast in and of itself, but we went from 140 to 220. That's a huge jump. Yeah. Anything over 200 is quite elite. And you saw what that did to Gold Coast. They had less time. They couldn't run through the front of the stoppages, particularly in the front half. They were unable to move the ball very well. And then our scores came off that. Basically, a lot of the times, Gold Coast just being pressured and turning the ball over and us then using that momentum to come forward. And so that's what it looked like in the second quarter, and we looked much, much better. I completely agree with you. We did sort of butcher the football early in the game. We were kicking with a breeze, and they were talking about this in the
commentary, yeah.
But it was a bit fluky. Like, it wasn't going down one end exactly. It was coming across the ground. And
it wasn't like that West Coast game in the preseason where you'd kick the ball and it'd just go 75, 80 meters. It didn't really look like the breeze was giving any advantage because we were a lot better in the second quarter. And I think the Suns in the last quarter really came on, but I think that's because obviously we were cooked. But yeah. I agree with what you said before with the pressure, because I've written a note down here that if we can bring elite pressure, we're not letting. What's my exact quote here? I think I wrote it on the Facebook and the Instagram page. When we put pressure on and we don't make every team in the AFL look like prime Barcelona, all we need is for the other opposition team to make a few mistakes and for us to tidy up ours a little bit, just a tiny bit on each end, and we look like such a better team. Our gulf between our skills and the other team's skills is massive. And then when we can bring that in even just a little bit, we look like a really, really competitive team. And we did that for the first quarter is a bit iffy, but the middle two quarters, bar the last 5 minutes, we looked great. And against a really physical team, a really in and under team in the Gold Coast, Matt Rowell was still getting everything in the contest, but we didn't let him just get it out to the outside and then run all over us. And yeah, if we can just keep that pressure on, which it doesn't seem like we can for 4 quarters, I think we can be a competitive team.
Yeah, agreed. I think the allure with the pressure rating is that we just got to keep it up above 200 the whole game. It's actually, I think it's almost impossible to do that. I don't think any team has done that, being able to maintain through 4 quarters of pressure rating over 100, over 200. But it's about, first off, knowing when to put the pressure on, to your point, and then being able to maintain that when the going gets hard. So particularly in that last quarter, clearly it dropped off because we couldn't maintain it, whereas Gold Coast obviously kept a relatively even pressure throughout the game and were able to then, as they saw us drop off, that almost gave them the bump and they were able to push through a little bit more. And, that's what happened. And it looked really, really bad because obviously they kicked, they ended up kicking a lot of goals in the last quarter and at the end finished off with 5-1 or something like that. And it just didn't look very good.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, halftime, I was happy we sort of got back in it and we came out, kicked the first goal. And And then the Suns still had their opportunities, but they weren't executing quite as well. I mean, the Suns 6 goals 1 in the first quarter, then at halftime 9 goals 5. We had 3 goals 7 at the end of the first, and we barely kicked up. We only kicked 4 more points for the rest of the game after quarter time. So we really tightened up our goal kicking, which, to be fair, in nearly every game we've played this year, our poor goal kicking in the first quarter has been the reason why we aren't leading a lot of these games. It definitely wasn't the Dogs game. It felt like that in the Demons game from memory as well. So, it was good for us to come out and just sort of stamp our authority. And we went on a little bit of a run with goals as well. And we sort of, that middle part of the third, we were looking really, really good. The pressure was still up. It was really good to come out after halftime and have the same intensity and do the same things. The third quarter fade out is pretty common in the North Melbourne world. So everything was going really, really well until, like you've pointed out, it says on the worm, I'm just looking at the worm here, and, sort of the 26-minute mark where King kicks a goal, and then all of a sudden they kick 2 in like 2 minutes to end the quarter. And that Matt Rowell goal, unfortunately, and I'm sure so many North fans listening to this can sympathise with this feeling, I just knew that was coming. And I was thinking in my head, here we go, a red time goal would absolutely kill us. And I think our defense was really, really weak all game around the stoppages that were in our back 50. And we just do not protect the attacking side of the contest. And that is the back side of the contest or the goal side of the contest. Say the ball up or the throw in is in the left pocket, our back pocket. We just do not protect anyone running across right in front of goal, sort of that 20 meters out directly in front sort of area. The amount of times that the Gold Coast could win the ball on the ground and just sort of have a couple of handballs and get a guy right in front of goal for a snap or something through the game, I think happened way too often. And I've pointed this out, I feel like, for 2 years, where every time the ball hits the ground for us, there's 3 runners that run around the back side of a pack. We all jump at the ball spills over, and the opposition team have about 3 runners that can just handball it between them and get some space, and they're out. So to me, it was an overreaction at the time. Of course, it turned out to be true. I'm a very emotional football watcher, if you ever sat with me at the football. But as soon as that Matt Rowell one went in, that was an absolute dagger to the heart. And that made me feel like I kind of knew what might be coming in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you felt the same, but that was an absolute dagger in the last minute of the last few seconds of the third.
Well, I already knew the score, so I kind of knew something was coming. But I actually point towards, and there was a point in the last quarter, probably halfway through the last quarter, maybe even just further than that, where there are a few. I'm obviously not blaming the umpires because it wasn't the umpires' fault that we lost, but there are a few sketchy free kicks. King got a very sketchy free kick. There was another one that was like a too high, which was
for me. It's with the amount of free kicks out of the ruck we concede, and this game in particular, but all the time. Jerry's a great ruckman, but the amount of and then Darling did it too. The amount of free kicks we concede from the ruck contest and the centre bounce is got to be the most in the league. I don't know the numbers on it. I'd love to look it up, but I feel like we concede so much out of the ruck every week, and it's the call where everybody stopped, and Matt Rowell even stopped, and then the umpire goes, just play on, and it's just an easy ball. That happened twice through the game, and we pointed this out against the Swans, where they also let the Swans do that, but every time we've got that through the middle, like LDU got a couple of clearances where there was a free kick and there was an advantage and you took it and they called him back. I just don't know why it doesn't go both ways. I don't understand which, and once again, this absolutely didn't change the result of the game, but it's frustrating to see. I feel like the times we've got an advantage, we always get called back. And then Sydney got one massive one out of the centre that they scored from the week before. And Gold Coast got 2 today. And the entire, every bloke on that field stopped. And then the umpire's just calling, go, go. And we're like, but everybody stopped, mate. So why do you call it back sometimes? Why do you not? If anything, that's the one you call back. So sorry, I interrupted your point there. But I had a note here about some of the free kicks I think were incredibly soft. I don't know the free kick count. I'll look it up now. But the amount we give out of the ruck and some of those advantage ones, geez, they hurt us.
Yeah, we lost the free kick count by 10. So it was 20 to 30.
Yeah.
And that was kind of obvious in the game.
It felt like that.
Ruck, don't just for the listeners out there, don't ever worry about ruck lotto free kicks because no one knows. Like the ruckmen don't know why the free kick is paid. The coaches don't know. The AFL don't know. The umpire probably doesn't even know they just go, that kind of looks like a free kick to one guy or the other. And it's impossible to understand how the free kicks in the ruck work. So I don't even bother doing it anymore. Otherwise I would just be tearing my hair out. There were, as I said before, there were just a few just devastating free kicks where we were pushing as hard as we could. We were just hanging on by a thread. And then particularly the King one was just a dagger in the heart.
The one where Core sort of grabbed him but sort of didn't? Is that one?
Yeah, like I don't know whether they paid it for an arm chop or whether they paid it. They kind of do this. They're very hot on the arm around the waist at the moment. The umpires are. I don't even know if that's a free kick because they don't pay every single one. So I think they pay the King versus Core one purely because King's a lot taller than Core, and like they would know that and they would be onto it straight away. I thought Core was really hardly done by there, and then King, to King's credit, he slotted it from a very difficult angle. So that was the dagger in the heart, which meant that we were just done after that point. And then the run on was kind of inevitable after that point.
Let's go to the fourth. I mean, we'll touch on this quickly before we get into the individual lines and some of the individual players. We just completely gave up. And I know it's hot. I know Clarkson did say at the end of his quote that I read in the article that it wasn't the weather that did it, but I think bringing up the weather is crazy. But, I think we just looked to have absolutely nothing left in the tank. There was no run, there was no fight. The amount of tackles that we missed in this game was shocking. And that's been us most weeks, especially our midfield. We just can't stick a tackle. Caleb Daniel, I really like him, and I think he's been a little bit underrated personally. I don't think he's been quite as bad as a lot of people are trying to point out. I think he's been quite good, to be honest. But, he's not going to be sticking tackles and things like that. So it just looked like we had nothing left to give and we'd given up. 10 minutes into that fourth quarter, they were just running all over us. I ended up rage quitting a little bit and just walked away for a bit. And I came back and they'd conceded another 3 and stuff like that. So it felt like old times in that last quarter. And the thing that pisses me off the most is that margin does not reflect the way we played football. And I think we deserve more credit. We don't for anything in the fourth quarter. But with how good it looks like the Suns are going to be this year, I think they're probably the best team we've played this year, or might finish highest on the ladder compared to the Crows and the Swans, and the other ones, maybe aren't going to be up there quite as much. But I'm just frustrated that I reckon it was some of the most solid football we've played up until the last bit of the third, and we're going to get no credit on it. We're going to get no... and do we deserve it for losing? Probably not. But as a North fan, I want to know that, we're not the only ones here just pretending we're getting better. I think we deserve a little bit of credit for it. I really like the way we played. And once we can get that for 4 quarters, which I think will come this year, I think we're going to be a good side. And that's the thing that frustrates me the most is over the course of the game, where we weren't 52 points worse than the Gold Coast, in my opinion.
That's true. I agree. I agree. Like, I think if you ask the Gold Coast, they'd say the same thing as well. Is that up until the midway, that was a really tough game up until the midway through, or late in the third quarter. But and obviously Clarko has been talking for a long time about we just want to stay competitive for longer in games. So we want to. Yes, we might lose games, but we want to lose them later, if that makes sense. The game is gone later, and we kind of did that. I think the game was gone probably midway through the last quarter, and against a team that's as good as that, I think that's somewhat of a positive. Obviously, we completely dropped our bundle, but we were super competitive up until that point. I do think that one of our issues is, as we talked about, is just our pressure throughout a game.
Yeah.
It's so it ebbs and flows. The difference between our highest pressure and our lowest pressure is massive. The other thing is a lot of that comes down to the defensive system. A lot of people would look at the way that we play defensively, particularly from like set plays, like a free kick on the back flank, for example. We go into a zone, and I'm not inherently against the zone. I'm not inherently for man-to-man, but quite clearly there are tweaks that need to be made to that system, because too often we just let them an easy chip mark around the zone and an easy entry on the other side for whatever reason. Now, that probably can be tweaked really comfortably, but my point is that if you have a really solid defensive system, it doesn't take so much out of the team physically to maintain that in those situations. And then that means that we can from an efficiency standpoint, we can keep that pressure up for longer in the game rather than we go into a zone and then it seems to take a lot out of us and then we can't maintain the like a really solid zone for long periods of time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, it's structure and it's more fitness to be able to run as one and always have support for our teammates as well. I mean, how many times in every single game do we run out of options and end up bombing it down the line where other teams can carve us up and there's always a runner with them. So I think those things really, really hurt. Let's start on the defense because there's we'll chat at the defense as a whole a little bit, but let's point out some players. I'll start with one and then maybe you can go to a different one so we don't take too long on this. The inclusion of Zach Fisher, how did you feel about that? Just in a sentence, how did you feel about the inclusion of him?
Probably not super confident.
Okay.
I know that's not very committal, but yeah, that's how I felt in one sense.
Yeah, because I like if something stood out from the Swans game, we needed run. And I thought Fisher was really good on the day. I looked it up, 5 turnovers for the game. That's pretty average for anyone on North Melbourne's half back line. I think he went at about 89% by foot, 27 touches, 12 kicks, 15 handballs, 478 meters gained. I think he added something that we needed in this game. And for a first game back of the year, I really like what he added. I know that he's always going to be a bit of a scapegoat. Like, I don't think it's any shock that McDonald, Tucker, and Fisher are always the scapegoats, playing probably the hardest position for North Melbourne on the ground and the halfback role. But, and I've been guilty of that too, blaming them for things. But I really liked what he added. I thought he played well. And I thought he added something off our half-back line, which drove us forward more than definitely anything we did against the Swans. We just didn't look quite as stagnant. Did you feel similar to me? I feel like there'll be people with very differing opinions on that. I don't really understand it because I thought he played well, but let me know what your thought is quickly on that.
Just going back to it, there was an article during the week from Daniel Hoyne about how North are the second slowest ball movement team in the comp.
I'm surprised we're not the slowest.
And I think Melbourne might be the slowest. It doesn't matter, but we're the second slowest. And it actually, to be honest, it actually stuck out more against Gold Coast than it did other times. I don't know why, because we're so slow from the back line. We have a really big problem moving it out of the back line. Now, I don't know why. And this is obviously a coaching thing. Like, we try and play this chip mark to try and hang on to the ball, but we also don't move it as quickly. But sometimes when we move it quickly, we look actually a lot better. You look at some of those. Open. Exactly. You look at Dersma's maybe second goal that Costanti set up for him. They just exploded off halfback.
Because I think he got the ball in the center of the ground and fed it to the handballer, and then he just ran forward and got on the end of it, which was
exactly. And that's the type of ball movement stuff that I like to see. And I understand you can't do that all the time, but that's so few and far between, and that's why we're the slowest ball movement team. Now, when Fisher comes in, I think that's a positive for the efficiency of the back line, as in like being able to move out of the back line without turning it over. That's a positive. But Fisher is not a explosive, like break the lines type player. He's a distributor. He's very similar to Caleb Daniel. So in that sense, I think he gave us a little bit. I don't know if he gave us what we need, which is that line breaking halfback, like a Dan Houston or what Colby could be potentially, because obviously he's very similar. Zach's very similar to Caleb Daniel. My issue with Zach Fisher isn't his offense, it's his defense. And what we'll come to in a little bit is that, and this is Caleb Daniel to a certain extent as well, is that we got absolutely wrecked on ground balls in our back line.
For sure.
I thought our talls actually stood up okay against their talls. Like, they didn't allow too many, like a stack of contested marks. Obviously, Kings kicked 5, but I mean, some of the delivery was incredible. So I think it was our ground balls that really cost us. And as you say, with those stoppages, also with spillages and crumbing. So I think that's where it hurt us in the end. If you have Archer instead of Zach Fisher in that situation, I think what you'll find is we don't concede as many goals from the small forwards.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that either. I just think I really liked with his role and what we know he can do. I don't think we should be blaming Zach Fisher for not being defensively good enough. That's not really his his fault or his prerogative. I think he just added an element of run and link up play that I don't think we had. It felt to me like we were better getting it away from halfback. We didn't seem to lose it off halfback a lot. It sort of got lost up the ground a little bit more, and I think it came back really quickly. But I just think I like what he added, and if we can structurally be better behind him, we know Zach Fisher's going to run off the halfback line and Caleb Daniel. It's really hard. Like, yes, we don't have that all-Australian Dan Houston type player, but we're North Melbourne. We don't have those players at the moment. So it's like, I think Daniel and Fisher definitely made us look like we had better run off the back line, but I completely agree that when it got turned over from the midfield or from the half forward line or coming out of our forward line, it did leave us very, very open. There was a lot of space in that 30, 35 metres out directly in front sort of area, which the Gold Coast exposed a few times. And I absolutely agree that's a byproduct of having Zach Fisher in there, but you can't really have the best of both worlds, unfortunately, which I don't think is Fisher's to blame. I don't think anyone's to blame except for maybe recruitment and coaching, to be honest. But I think for the job I'm sure he was given on the day and what we expect from Zach Fisher, I think he was good. I think he was really good on the day. I'm sure people will hate that and, will want him out of the team, but I don't think it's on him at all. I think maybe if you can try and add Fisher, look, I mean, McKercher at the moment getting subbed off, we can maybe touch on that because he's sort of part of the back line, but maybe McKercher, and I think McKercher should stay in the team. I think persist with him because I think the last 2 weeks before this game, he was quite good, but maybe those guys, having Daniel Fisher and McKercher around halfback, and when you include O'Sullivan and stuff, it is a lot of smaller players that run. And can we get Archer in this team while keeping a couple of guys off halfback to run like what Fisher added? So, look, that's not for me to work out. That's for Alistair Clarkson, the weatherman, to work out at the moment. So we'll see what he can do. I agree with what you say about the key defenders as well. I think they held up fairly well. I wasn't super hot on Griffin Logue at the start of the game, but I think he worked his way into the game. I'm starting to get a little bit skeptical on Griffin Logue just because I think he didn't earn his spot back in the team. And I think he had a decent game. I don't think he should be dropped or anything like that, but he made a few mistakes at the start of the game, running off his man, trying to tackle and left us completely exposed in the back line, getting caught for holding the ball, which he should have done better with, or at least be able to dispose that. I was a bit hot on him at the start of the game. I've just got a note, and he sort of worked into it and became pretty solid third man up and that sort of stuff. Not a great intercept mark or anything, which I thought he maybe would be better at, but he'll never sort of get outmarked. He always sort of brings the ball to ground. So I think he worked into the game okay, but I maybe just don't think he earned his spot completely. Is there anyone else in the defense you would like to point out in particular, or a way we played or anything like that?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to point out is just how we structure up down there. I think, obviously, with Archer coming back over the next couple of weeks, depends on what happens with his hammy. Who do you drop from that team? Like, I don't think you can drop Fisher after how he played. I would say that you probably have to drop Tucker. That's my take. I think you drop Tucker because he don't get me wrong, he actually had a good game. Like,
I was going to say, I was going to look at his disposal.
Okay.
21 touches, 81% by foot. I think he had a few, we had a decent amount of rebound 50s, if I could just try and find that here, or maybe he didn't. But
we need lockdown.
Fisher, O'Sullivan, core, Daniel, yeah. But it's hard though, right? Because you can't. I agree. I think he's peaked, but he's not a bad player. And this is the hard thing. And this is where people differ. I know Marnie's opinion on Tucker is very different to a lot of the fans. And I completely respect Marnie's opinion on it. And she's right to a degree. Like, I think he's a complete scapegoat. But he's also a scapegoat that I sort of think we should replace as well. But until, like, a Hardiman should be what we want on that backline, right? The mix of defense, offense. Hopefully Goda could be something like that. But Hardiman is coming on a sub at the moment and that sort of stuff. So it's hard to find it structurally, but I think it's also hard to drop Tucker when he's not playing bad. But can you drop him because he's not going to improve? I don't know. It's a really hard conversation.
It is a hard conversation. I think you're just looking for people to drop, basically, at that point, based on Archer coming back into the side, which he does need to do, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Just purely based on his previous form. And we do need an actual, just purely lockdown defender, a sit in your pocket small defender, and that is Archer, obviously. So who you drop from that back line becomes a lot more difficult. And it depends on the structure, because quite clearly, based on the Fisher-Daniel situation over 2.5 quarters, I guess it worked. I'd say it probably more worked than didn't work, having those two players together. But obviously it exposes us defensively. So you have to then go, okay, well, if we're going to go with that structure of times two distributors, then we have to work out what we do with the other guys. And the only two people you can drop are McDonald and Tucker out of those smalls.
And then they've both kind of been okay though, right?
They've both been pretty good. So you kind of I guess you have to drop Tucker. And I like Tucker. I'm a Tucker guy.
You're a Tucker guy.
Tucker puts his head in the hole every week. He goes back with the fly. I think he's a very tough player. I think Clarko loves him though.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those situations where, we throw our hands up and see what happens. Because I actually thought Fisher was coming in for RHJ, to be honest.
Yeah.
and was going to play that role. So.
And you're right. You can just tell from watching the game that it structurally made us a lot weaker, just defensively. So I don't know the balance there. And you're right. Like Archer should be coming back into this team. Maybe not next week, maybe the week after, depending on the hammy. But just Hardeman get a start instead, and can maybe give us a bit more defensive pressure, but also run a little bit. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I don't think Fisher deserves to get dropped after that game. Give him a couple of games to see what he can do. And then if he's not maybe competing defensively enough, maybe you can move him to a wing. Does Colby need a spell? I wouldn't be in favour of that personally. I think on his day, he might just pop, and I don't want to miss out on that chance. But, getting subbed off is a little bit interesting from Colby's perspective. What did you think before we moved to the midfield then? How did you feel about Colby getting subbed off? Probably the right call on the day, I would say. I mean, just looking at some of the numbers, I mean, he got 8 touches, which for him is not good. Probably the right call, but I don't think it's drop worthy because of his talent and what he can do.
Yeah, I would say you always preface these conversations with, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, because we don't know what's going on with him. We don't know how he's been training. We don't know. Unless you're Joel the Mole and you go to every single training session and the registration plates of each player's car in the car park.
Yes.
We've got
Joel,
no
get us
idea.
his rego plate if you can.
We don't know what's going on with him. He might have a little niggle. That's why I didn't have the output that he normally does. I follow this guy, The King, on Twitter, and he was really, really scathing about Colby, because Colby was involved essentially in 3 goals for Gold Coast in the last few minutes of the third quarter.
There was one where he should have at least kept the ball in front of him, or at least got on top of the ball and caused a stoppage that spilled out. It was a turnover, and the Gold Coast just, like I always say, guy gets the ball, 1 handball, 2 handball, 3 handball, you're out. And I agree. It was probably his worst game for the club, to be honest. But I think I want to preface this. It wasn't a great game. I'm not saying it was, and he was worthy of being subbed. This goes back to our game style thing that we talked about before. We don't have a game style that favours Colby in the slightest. If you look at us building the ball slowly up from the back line is not what Colby McKercher is built to do. He's built to run as fast as he can through the middle of the ground and deliver the ball inside 50. Now, I'm not saying that's all he does, but that's his one wood. And you saw it a couple of times where he can burn people off. Yeah, he still had those moments.
Yeah, he burnt off Rogers, who's he's a fast player.
When he started he took 3 bounces, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm at Marvel again watching him run down the wing.
But the problem is that we weren't structured ahead of the ball. There was nothing ahead of the ball.
Yeah.
So that's less about him and more about how we play as a club. And look, as I said, going back, I don't want to waffle about it. I wouldn't drop him. I think it's one bad game. I think he's got oodles of talent. I don't think what we do helps him. So just give him a go. You can continue to give him a go on the wing.
Hey Josh. Hey Marnie. Jen here. I was at the game today in the Barossa. Oh my God, it was so hot. What the hell happened? We were up by 8 points and we got 52. Oh my God. We just don't like playing in South Australia.
I'm so sorry that you lost, but I'm very excited that you tried your best, because trying your best gets you even better.
Robbo the Rude Boy here. Oh, to play 2.5 quarters is not good enough. Got to play 4 quarters. Our leaders in the middle of the ground got smashed halfway through the third quarter by Anderson, Rowell and Miller. Is there any chance McKercher will put his body on the line? His soft efforts cost us goals.
Hey, Richie, the shinboner from Canberra here. Hey, Josh, and if Marnie's on. I just thought we were pretty good for 2.5 quarters. I just think the heat got to us and we just died in the bum where Gold Coast are used to that heat. So they could play it out, but you could see we were all cooked. So only downside, I reckon McKercher have a week in the seconds. But yeah, go Roos.
All that hard work wasted. Honestly. You can pick out a lot of individual performances that were good, but it's a team sport and the team should know how to win. Playing for each other, not for the greater sum of their parts. Enough's enough. Back end of this team's just fallen right out of it. Clarko says we're on track. Well, that track's going right off a cliff at this rate. I'm sick and tired of this old nilly-willy bloody dandelion treatment that they're giving us. Come on your bike, lads.
Let's go to the midfield. Centre bounce attendances is something I always find really, really interesting. And I mean, LDU had more centre bounce attendances than Tristan Sherry, which is really, really interesting. Sheasel, a lot more centre bounce attendances. He's been sort of 10 to 12 or 10 to 14 CBAs for the first month of football, 26 CBAs, it says here, this for the game, which I don't think he was great in the middle of the ground, to be honest. I think around the ground really clean and did his stuff. I don't think he was fantastic. Maybe from clearance, I'll look at the numbers. I mean, what did he get? 3 clearances for the game from 26 centre bounce attendances. So I don't think he was fantastic in the middle of the ground. I feel like it was a more contested game and maybe didn't suit him. Around the ground, fantastic. I love Harry Shears. This is absolutely not me saying Harry Shears didn't have a good game. Kicked a couple of goals, I think, and I really liked his attacking element of the game when he got it. He was very clean and finally getting on the scoreboard, which is great for him. But one thing I'm just going to point out here, which is a little bit of a side note, the Griffin Logue, it says, had 2 centre bounce attendances. So I don't know if someone's punched the stats in wrong, or did he have a couple of ruck?
No, this was when you rage quit and had 3 shots of Terramana tequila. when he was actually in the ruck for the last 2 centre bounces.
Was he? Because I'd rage quit at that point and I'd walked out of the room and just had to go and I said to my partner, I need to go and have a second because I need to cool my head. Okay, because I did miss that. Yeah, wow.
And he actually did all right. I actually think it's probably a good thing in some ways because, well, it's not good because I think we'll talk about Sherry in a little bit, but it's not a good because of him not being in there. But the fact that we've got Griffin has enough confidence in his body to be able to go into a ruck duel.
Because Chom pushed forward as well late in the game.
Yeah.
So they really started throwing a few of those key defenders away. So, but does that show that we're not structuring correctly? I know that we're talking about the midfield now. Sorry to go back there, but like, I know it's sort of a Hail Mary play and I understand that it's just throwing the magnets around at the end of the game, but how are we so unwilling to do that? Change something not quite as drastic earlier. And also if we're willing to put Logan the ruck and throw Chom forward and have one key defender down there in core, do we trust these key defenders enough? I mean, the big key defender, the reliable key defender is the thing we're missing the most. Core does his best every week, but we do need to upgrade on that if we're going to improve. Chom's never going to be the one-on-one guy, even though I think he played a lot of one-on-one. I don't think he did a lot of intercepting in this game. So it's just an interesting conversation, I think. Like Will Dawson, I don't know where he's at. Toby Pink, I think, is so stiff to not keep getting a game. So look, anyway, we'll leave that there and we'll go back to the midfield because I don't want to harp on the defense too much so the pod doesn't go too long. Centre bounce attendances, I mean, it's LDU, Sheasel, Parker, and I said in the preview pod that we need a different variety of people through the middle. It's slightly different. I mean, Parker didn't get quite as many, Powell 16, Simpkin 14. So the same sort of mix there. I just think we don't have enough pace out of that middle. And I really wish they could throw Colby in for a centre bounce. I think he's got 2 centre bounce attendances for the year or something like that. And that's something I'm a little bit confused about. Because if he's not getting the ball around the ground, why aren't you trying to throw him in the guts? And imagine a couple of those times we win the ball, his pace, his first 2-3 steps getting him going away from a contest could break the game open for us. So I'm just surprised that we don't even try that. But what's your thought on the midfield mix? And if you want to point out any individual names, please throw them at me.
Yeah, I don't look at the CBAs as much as you do, or the super coach people, because obviously it's a big point spinner for the super coach people. But I look at, so my take on CBAs is that I don't think Colby's well suited to CBAs. Because he's not. He's an outside player essentially, and I understand the pace thing, but Colby's got sustained pace over 50 to 100 meters. If I would be interested to see who in the club would have the best first 5 meters, because that's what really matters in a CBA.
You can really throw an O'Sullivan in that though as well.
You could throw O'Sullivan in there. You could throw Curtis in there. He's
That's
a very
true.
explosive
LDU
character.
obviously, but he's always in there.
Zerha, these type of guys. But LDU is a great example of that. He's very explosive over like that 5 to 10 meter.
Yeah.
And Josh, you always tell me about guys who can jump out of pools. These are the type of guys that we want in there, guys who can jump out of pools. So I'm not as worried about that. More my worry when it comes to the midfield is how we look. If anybody wants to get on the AFL app and look at the numbers look favourable. Or at least even, right?
I think we're the second best coming into this game. Don't quote me on this, but I think someone said we're one of the second best clearance numbers in the league, if I'm not mistaken. I heard it. I didn't look it up, but I heard someone say that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd say, and I've said this for ages, our clearance numbers look great, but you watch the games and our clearances aren't great.
Yeah, and the reason why is because our clearances aren't what they term in the football world as shoulders out clearances, which are these clearances where you get 1 or 2 handballs, or maybe no handballs, but whoever it is explodes out of the stoppage and is running straight towards their own goal that they're kicking towards. And they're the best clearances, clearly, because they're the ones where you can spot up a target. You can kick it to exactly what you want to kick it to. We don't have those clearances in the same amount as the teams that we play. So if you look at, and this stuck out, particularly in this first quarter against Gold Coast yesterday, is their clearances were so much cleaner. 2 or 3 handballs into space and then hitting up a leading target as a general rule, as opposed to our ones, which, as you've pointed out many times, is quite often 1 handball and then straight onto the boot,
Hack kick,
which is a high dump kick, or straight onto the 1 or 2 handballs and then a kick into the pocket. Or we rarely get that really explosive straight out of the front of the stoppage, deep entry into forward 50. And I think that's been our massive problem. And how we get that, I don't know. I think that's probably that's a structural thing. But whilst we do well on the numbers, and our midfielders have excellent numbers, like if you look at the individual performances yesterday in a relatively like low possession game, there were a lot of stoppages. Were really good. Like very good dream team scores, between 22 and 30 possessions with our main sort of 5 midfielders. Like you look at that and you go, okay, they played okay, but the actual way that the game went doesn't reflect that in any way.
No, I completely agree. And we've been talking about this since the dawn of time. It's our numbers compared to what we're watching. The eye test is absolutely just as good of a reflection of the game as the numbers. And I think you have to take both into consideration. Tristan Xerri's clearances are this for me, where people are saying, look, he's like almost like Goldie. He's roving his own taps and getting clearances. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I love Tristan Xerri. His tackle work, his pressure, his ruck craft's got better. And we can talk about him a little bit now around the ground. I don't think he was really in the game, but the clearances he gets, it's usually a Bailey Scott type kick around the shoulder to absolutely nothing. And there was so many times in this game where we would do those dump kicks or win the ball and panic a bit instead of keeping our heads, kick the ball forward. And the Suns always had someone back for that, because it doesn't take a genius to watch a North Melbourne game and know if you can sit someone sort of 25, 30 meters backside of the pack, there's a 50% chance you're going to be getting that football. So it's sort of disappointing that those things don't change when, I'm just a fan of football. I've watched it my whole life, but I'm no coach. I'm no expert player. And I can see these things. And it's frustrating as a fan when you don't see those very simple things improve. Pointing out some more individual players, Simpkin is a great example of this, where the numbers and everything that you look at him do numbers-wise looks great. But then and I actually think he had a pretty good game yesterday, except for once again, just the most horrendous of turnovers, lazy sort of kicks that lead to transition goals. And you could see, he's butchered the ball, which has led to a turnover in a very crucial stage. It was it late in the third or early in the fourth? It was one or the other. And it's led to a goal. I think it was a goal, and the Gold Coast were getting on a little run at that point, and we needed to respond. And it was just such poor quality that led to that. And it's your captain. And it just hurts so much because I think his game overall was really good. I really like what Jai offers. He's always going to put his head over the footy. He's going to compete. He's got his little side, his step back, and he's pushing forward, and he kicked a couple of goals in this game, and I really like it. But like the Swans game, and it's 2 weeks in a row now where he's had these, it's almost like a Jaden Stevenson, kick the ball to Buddy and turn your back moment that we just won't forget, where it's been 2 weeks in a row where you've just done this, such a bad looking turnover that's led directly to a goal that you just can't excuse. And it was such a poor turnover. It almost makes the rest of the game. It's just like, now we're negative on Simpkin. Instead of coming out of that game going, he really tried his guts out, he's had a moment which is probably the biggest moment of the game that just was the most deflating moment that we knew that we weren't coming back.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not as harsh on that as everybody else, just because like skill errors happen. I don't think
it's the way it happened though. It's just in a moment that it shouldn't happen. Not in a way where we've fumbled a pass or we've dropped a mark. It's a way where, it's a simple kick over the top or something like that. Or you just have to put a kick out in front of someone, like in the Swans game where, he spins out of the tackle, does all the hard work, and you just got to put it in front of Larky because he had a paddock to run into. And it's so simple, and someone of that level and our captain shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I completely disagree. I think you're being very, very harsh. I think this is classic Monday morning quarterback, and like we're sitting on a couch and going, you should have hit that kick when like we can't run out of sight on a dark night.
It's not necessarily not hitting the kick per se, but it ends in such a catastrophic way. That
but that's not all his fault.
I don't agree.
That's not all his fault because
he does it all the time though.
But he's done it twice in 2 weeks, mate. That's not all the time. That's twice in 2 weeks out of 55 possession he had for the
that Simpkin doesn't do that too regularly. You cannot tell me that.
Yeah, but it's not that like he's done it twice in 2 weeks, which is terrible. And you're hanging him out to dry. He's leading our BNF at the moment.
Shambles, if that's true. That's the reason
he's leading our BR. Like if you look at our team, like he's been our best player this whole year.
Well, that to me is a perfect case of why the numbers don't tell the whole story of the game, because I think he had a good game. Okay, I said that before. I think he had a good game, but the turnovers that he does are so poor that it leads to easy scores, which you can't accept from a captain of the football club. And I understand that it's those in 2 games, but how many times last year did we see the same thing? It's happened in every game this year, maybe not standing out as much as the 2 in the last couple of weeks. And I understand it's an easy target right now because I think he had a good game. And I agree, his clearance work, his work around the ground, his toughness around the ball, getting on the score sheet, tick, tick, tick. I think other than his turnovers, he's having a good season. But it's the way that the ball gets turned over and the spots that he seems to turn it over for the captain, for a guy that's on a 5-year deal, for the guy who needs to stand up in moments. They've come in times where the game is in the balance and we've got a little run against us and it deflates us. And in those moments, I know it's just the symptom of maybe he has the ball, but it is him and it deflates the team. And his disposal has never been his quality. We've been saying that for years about him. And like I said, I'm not just trying to pick on him per se, but it's these moments in games that that moment there was the moment that I was like, it's not happening today. And it just came at such a crucial time. So look, I'll stop ranting on this, but is the captain, and if you can execute that and get that goal with Larky last week, that would take us within a goal, and you can get that goal to go against the run of a couple of goals in a row that the Gold Coast were extending their lead early in the fourth, we're in the game, and our captain shouldn't do. I know it's a different quality of play, but look at Pendlebury will stand up for the Pies, and Cripps, as bad as Carlton are, will stand up in moments like that. And I know he's not that quality of player. He's a really good player, Jai, and I really like him. I love him as a captain. I wanted him as solo captain, and I think he's having a good year. But it's the turnovers at the times he does them in the fashion. I just think it just hurts us so much.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, Josh, because you feel as though these mistakes have cost us games, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But he's putting himself in position to influence the game. Like the Sydney one, I was literally sitting at that end and I could see the whole thing happen. His commitment to the ball, to win the ball, and he did 95% of it well, and he's missed the kick.
Yep.
Same thing with yesterday. He's done everything right, and he's made a skill error. And skill errors happen. I understand you're saying, well, they happen at bad times. Mate, Michael Jordan missed more game-winning shots than he made. Because he puts himself in the gun, and he's willing to do that.
When they come off, look what happens, and it doesn't come off for Simpkin.
Yeah, but you're picking out one or two examples. Like I can't.
But they're the moments. You only get certain moments in games to have those big times. Like, you know, if Michael Jordan doesn't hit the shot against the Jazz in 97, then you're thinking, oh God, like, you know, it didn't cut. And if that happened consistently through his career, you'd be like, why is he taking the shot? Like
it did happen consistently early in his career. That's what I'm saying, mate. And he said it himself. He's missed so many shots over his career that you have to put yourself in that position consistently. And the fact that he's doing that, like he has the courage to do it. Like where was everybody else? Is my point. I am defending him because I feel like he's made skill errors, yes, and yes, they've been at crucial times, but he's putting himself in the gun to do them. And you can criticize him for the skill error, yes, but you can't criticize him as like as a player and say that he's
criticize him as a player.
You did. You said this takes away from his complete career. Like
no, I didn't say his career. I said his game. I said his game. I did not say his career.
Well, you've talked about the last 2 years.
It's true, but it's
true. You're talking about careers.
I didn't say that his.
You're talking about careers, Josh.
No, you're taking this well out of context. He's made consistent.
I'm just repeating what you're telling me.
Absolutely not. I said that his big skill error yesterday and the week before happened in such a crucial moment that it almost takes away from all the good work, or that's the part that we can focus on. And is that correct? No. But we can't deny it happened in crucial moments where we could have been in games and it swung the momentum of games. Now, I didn't say that he's done that his whole career. What he's done his whole career is have glaring skill errors in whatever points of games that he should tidy up a little bit, being the captain, being a 7-8 year player now. And I think in those moments, you want your captain having the ball, but you don't want your captain having the ball and you sort of being like, oh, I hope he hits this kick. Remember when Boomer Harvey got the ball and you were like, it's going to go straight to someone's chest. When Sheasel gets the ball most of the time, it's going straight to someone's chest. I want to have that confidence in the player with the ball to be able to execute that. Now, I think we can all agree that Jai and his skill errors are one of the things that's let him down every now and then throughout his career. Doesn't always take away from what he does, but those last 2 games, I just think the moment that the turnover happened, and yes, maybe it is just a small sample size of him, but those last 2 games, those 2 moments led to the momentum swings and flattened us and got us out of the games. It's not a reflection of his career, but the last 2 games, he's had the moments that can lead to a goal for or against, and I just think it's a big moment. So look, I don't want it to come across like I'm bashing him. I think he had a good game. I really, really do, and I think he's had a good season. But it's these spot moments where I wish he could just execute it, because I think it is game-breaking moments. And maybe it's just unlucky that it's been him in that situation, but I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be like Simpkins got the ball, he's going to find a target, like we used to have with Boomer, Sean Higgins, Daniel Wells got the ball, those sort of players, and you were like, I know that he's going to make the right decision here as the captain, and I don't maybe feel that for Simpkin. I'll question nothing else about his game because he puts his head over it. He gets on the score sheet. I love him as a captain. I love the way he speaks, and I want him as the captain of the footy club. But the last couple of weeks, I just think the way the ball's been turned over and the moment has maybe hurt or taken away from the overall performance that he has delivered. So, look, I understand we disagree, and that's okay. That's a little bit of spice for the podcast for everybody. But I just feel that way about it, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Look, I still think he's definitely winning a BNF though. I think he's not had one bad game really.
Interesting. All right, let's go to anything else in the midfield you'd like to talk about. I mean, it was an okay Tom Powell game. Sort of didn't do anything wrong, didn't break the game open. He was sort of there. look at some other guys. I think Dylan Stevens to me looked like he had a pretty good game. I mean, 21 touches, 76%. I think he offered a bit on the wing, and I've sort of been sticking up for Dylan Stevens a little bit the last few weeks. I think he was pretty good last week against the Swans, and he offered a lot, sort of linking up halfback wing on the left-hand side. 21 touches this game. I think the biggest thing for me this year with him is he's not pulling out of the contest all the time. And even if he's not, he might not still be strong enough, but he's not that sort of player. I just don't think he's backing out of contests this year, and I think that's helping him a lot. 21 touches, pretty solid on the wing. I like what he did. Didn't break the game open, but it's another solid guy that, I think we should give a little bit of credit to, breaking his way back into the team, starting as sub and then getting a start. Do you feel similar or?
He's okay. He's like just meh for me. I think he's not pulling out a contest. I think he's just smarter about not putting himself in a position where
I guess what I'm saying is that he doesn't look
out.
as weak in the contest or doesn't get bullied as much.
Yeah, but again, I think that's just a matter of him not putting himself in positions where he looks like he's going to get bullied. Like he doesn't put himself in the hole to intercept any mark, so he doesn't have to go back with the fly. It's smart, really. Like it's what I would do.
It's more what I mean. I think is like when the ball spills out and he's the one running at the ball. I don't see him looking at who's going to tackle him as much and sort of hesitate. I just think he at least takes the ball now and goes to ground and causes a stoppage. And I know this is a low bar. I'm understanding this, but I think he was good yesterday. To be honest, I maybe temper my thoughts on him a little bit because I know the backlash I'll get about him, but I think it was good. 21 touches, clean with the ball. I don't think he did anything wrong yesterday. I think he earned his spot and he's played better than a lot of other players on the team. So,
yeah, that's true. Yep, he's a little bit better than everybody else. I think he was like in the top half of players. Probably.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he broke the game open and blew my head off, but I think he's solid and he played a solid game and he did well. Anything else through the midfield you would like to point out? I'm just looking at some numbers here to see if there's anything really to talk about. I mean, you look at clearance numbers, 8 for LDU, 7 for Parker. I think let's talk about Parker before we go to the forward line quickly. Like, I think he's been really good the last 2 weeks. And I think his leadership is starting to show. I mean, playing with broken ribs as well. I'm sure it's not that bad if he's playing, let's not say his ribs snapped in half or anything, but I think he's really standing up. Him and Constanti seem to always find a little connection in the forward line as well to kick a goal between each other. So I really like what he's offering, and I think his leadership is really showing in that midfield. 7 clearances, a bunch of CBAs, and I don't know. The last 2 weeks I've been really happy with what he's been doing.
I think his ribs are literally snapped in half.
You think they are?
Yeah, like that's what a broken rib is.
But a broken rib can be like a hair. Like people say it's a broken rib, he's got a fracture or something, like a hairline fracture.
It doesn't make that. Have you ever had broken ribs, Sean?
No, I'm not saying it's not impressive. This is not what I'm saying.
I've had broken ribs. I've had broken ribs. I can tell you right now, whether it's broken or fractured, it makes no difference. It's so much pain.
Yeah, not what I was questioning. I was questioning if his rib was snapped in half, can you play football? This is my question. I haven't had broken ribs, and
you can. I mean, you can play football with a broken leg.
Because the way people talk about it, it's like you couldn't get off the couch, you couldn't do anything. So I'm surprised if his rib is in half.
Yeah, which is what it's like for normal people like us. Like you can't get it off. You can't get off. Yeah, you can't get off the couch with broken ribs, mate. I'm telling you, like I was laid up for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And the worst part about broken ribs, if anybody ever has them, you can look forward to this. It's not like a normal injury where they get better slowly. Like you get past that first week and you're like, okay, it's feeling better. Broken ribs are like sore up until like 4 or 5 weeks, and then they just magically go to 99%. And so he's probably having a few jabs when he plays, but he's a tough player,
No,
he's a tough player, and he's probably, I was never. We talked about it on the pod. I was never a detractor of his move to the football club. I thought it was a really good move, and he's performed really admirably for sure. So yeah, he's been good.
All right, forward line. Zane Dersma, give me your rundown on his game. I think of minimal impact around the ground, but snuck forward and got on at the end of a couple. I didn't do heaps outside the 2 goals, but I mean, you can't really question a couple of goal return. 9 touches for the game. He was okay. The goals make the game a lot better and a lot more acceptable. But what was your thoughts on him for the game?
Yeah, so I guess he comes in for RHJ. Really, that's what the change was, and I probably. No, like I think he probably hit the scoreboard a little bit more than RHJ, so that's a plus. I guess how much extra pressure did he put on? I probably not as much as Hansen Jr., but that's okay. Like, I think he'll build into that. I think it's good for him to come into the team and kick a few goals. Like, he's obviously highly talented. And I think that will be his lot for a little bit of time, which is maximum impact with minimal touches, because he's such a good finisher.
Yeah.
So I think we persist with him.
I agree.
If it is him versus RHJ, then maybe he stays in. I think he should stay in there for an extended period of time to see what he can bring. He's clearly improved his physicality.
He looks bigger.
Yeah, yeah, and his tank, because he can get up and down. He has been playing a little bit more midfield in the twos and played midfield in the preseason as well. So I think that's going to help him. That high half forward position is gradually becoming the most important position in football, because you need basically all of the skills. You need to have a great tank. You need to have exceptional kicking, because a lot of it's inside 50. You need to have good marking, because quite often you're going to be one-on-one. So he fits that bill as long as we can keep him healthy, and as long as you can keep him involved in the game.
Yeah. Paul Curtis continues his what looks like a career best year. Kicked another couple of goals, really lively in that forward line. I mean, there's not heaps to talk about with his game per se, but just more of an acknowledgement on him as a player and how he's sort of taken a step this year. But his partner up there, Zerha, minimal, but I want to give him a shout out, because I feel like every time he was around the ball, he caused a contest or made a smart play. There were some times where the ball sort of spills to half forward, he's outnumbered and just caused the contest instead of what could have been a quick transition. Always puts his body on the line. There was times he had to go, and he did. I think he was at 9 touches for the game, perhaps. Yeah, 9 touches, 1 goal, which was a really nice goal. It shows he's improved as well, because last year, a game like that, he wouldn't have had impact on the game still. And this year, only 9 touches, but all of those 9, I can nearly guarantee, had at least a minimal impact on the game, or caused something positive for us to happen.
For sure, 100%. And I mean, Dermy said it in the commentary. I try to turn Dermy down as much as I can, to be honest, when I'm watching the footy. But he pointed out as well, like, Zerha really put his body on the line yesterday.
Yep.
Got smashed so many times. He'd be a sore boy this morning, but I thought he did a really admirable job. I think he's part of a really like a properly functioning forward line. I think it's a forward line that gradually improves with efficiency. Just on Curtis, is there a more exciting guy to watch tackle another person?
He dumps people, doesn't he?
He smashes people. Like, he doesn't hold back, and he's got a good technique. So I love watching Curtis at the moment. He missed an easy one late in the game, which he'd be pretty gutted about. Yeah. 3 goals is a lot better than 2 goals. So, but yeah, Curtis having a good year. I guess Larky's the other one, mate. What did you make of his game? He kicked 2-2.
Yeah, sort of. It's almost like not a classic Larky game, but like very minimal. How many touches did you get? 12 touches. Didn't really do much outside of kicking those couple of goals, but he's always a presence. So I don't think those other guys could contribute as much if Larky wasn't doing what he's doing. Yeah, better than the Swans game, because he kicked his goals late in the Swans game when it was completely done. I mean, Larky, not going to ride home about it. This is a 5-6 out of 10 Larky game for me. Ticked the box, kicked a couple, competed, just didn't get the delivery, which isn't his fault per se. But yeah, it was okay. Still came out with a couple of goals, but 2 goals for Nick Larky is pretty standard stuff. So I wasn't blown away, but do you have a different view on it?
No, I thought it was pretty standard. I think, again, like, it comes down to that ball movement piece that we talked about before. Like, when the ball comes in really, really quickly, he's clearly a very effective forward, as is Curtis. They seem to find space really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think hopefully once our ball movement starts improving a little bit more, we'll be in pretty good shape. Mind you, we've kicked 88 points, 89 points. What was it?
Yeah.
And we've got done by 52. So we're still like producing, we're still kicking goals.
This is the thing I've sort of been on this year is like, I think our forward line's doing pretty well. If Jack Darling has been really important, we'll chat about him in a sec, because I want to point out his ruck efforts as well. But I think our forward line looks really dangerous. I believe we can score. There was a play where, I think John Noble, we smothered it, and then we smothered the ball again and just kept it in our forward line. And that sort of pressure was really dialed up. I'm really impressed with the forward line this year. I mean, if we played this game last year, we scored 60 points. You know what I mean? And I think if we can ever, and look at this, the second half of that D's game, or the last quarter especially, if we can kick well out of the middle and get space and get time with the football and deliver it, we're kicking over 100 points every week. It's the back line that scares me and the defensive efforts from the midfield that scare me. So, our offensive side of the game, except for maybe running off half back, I think is pretty good. Once we get going, we look sharp, but it's the defensive side. Jack Darling, a couple of goals in this one, edging towards making Corns run the tan, which is really exciting. But I think the best thing about him was his ruck. He's backing up in the ruck with Sherry. I think Humphrey is the younger ruck for the.
It's Ethan Reid. Ethan Reid.
But wasn't there someone Humphrey that was backing up Reid in the ruck?
No, so Witts is their main ruckman, and then Reid is their secondary ruck. Bailey Humphrey's a half forward who's having a really good year actually, as for FYI. But
anyway, Darling in the ruck showed his dad strength. And I think that was really, really good by him. He got pinned for one of them. One of the ones where he sort of pushed him and then got the tap was okay, but then he did the same thing and it wasn't okay the next time, which goes back to your point about the ruck. So who knows what's going on. But even around the ground, I think he did really, really well backing up in the ruck. And he was a big net positive to give us some clearance around the ground as well, which Jerry didn't seem to. I don't know what game percentage Jerry played. It seemed like maybe not quite as much as the first few weeks, but I think he did really, really well. Got on the end of a couple of goals as well. He took a couple of marks leading up the ground, and he's always presenting, especially on that left wing. So Mac Andrew covered him pretty well for a few of those, but geez, he's not going to out athletic Mac Andrew. So yeah, look, I think he was good on the day. A good bounce back from a couple of quieter weeks from him, and just played his role spot on.
Yeah, this is why I hate the commentary from. Look, I do listen to stacks of Kane Corns, and I think he's one of those guys who's really smart because he is able to elicit emotions in people, and that's why he's become so popular, and why he works 78 hours a week on 25 different shows. But if he's very negative about the Darling acquisition, I'm not at all. I think what it's done to our forward line is made us structure up significantly better.
Look at the scores we're kicking. It can't just be a coincidence.
100%. And this is why, like, I guess the question is it's always going to be whether you go Darling or Teakle. Or Darling and or it's Darling or Teakle or Maley. And quite clearly Teakle's a better ruckman than Jack, but he just doesn't have the forward craft of Jack, and the spacing is so important. And what Jack does to draw the ball and draw defenders away from Larkey has just been significant for our forward line. And to your point, it's such a good point. He led Ethan Reid a merry dance yesterday, like in the ruck. He got forward on him. He had the old man strength pushing him around. He was fantastic. He was a great. Well, I don't think he ever lost form, but I think it was good to see him having a really effective and efficient game.
Last point, maybe before we go to the votes and the moment of the game, just another tick for Constanti as well. I mean, not getting heaps and heaps of touches, but I think when he's around the ball, the willingness to hunt the footy on him, I think, is something we haven't had for years, and got on the end of another goal from Luke Parker as well. So he's hitting the scoreboard better than any small forward that we've had. A proper small forward that we've had since Lindsay. So, I'd much rather him down there. It feels better than a Phoenix Spicer or a Kane Turner. That's what I'm saying. So, I love the way he hunts the ball. I love when he kicks a goal, how up and about he is as well. You can tell he loves playing, and he loves football. And sometimes we need a bit of a spark in that forward line. So just a point on him, just another tick, I think, for him. I can see why he was picked. I didn't have him around one side stupidly. And I can see what Clarkson sees in him and what he can add, something completely different to what anyone else can offer.
Yeah, it's hard to have him in your round one side when you've actually not really seen him play, though, to your credit. Like, we didn't know what he actually brought. Like, I had a look at his numbers in the VFL. I'm like, they didn't jump off the page for me. But a lot of that is because he's playing, as I've said before, starvation corner. Like, small forward is one of the worst roles to play, because if you don't hit the scoreboard, people criticize you. If you don't tackle, people criticize you. It's really, really difficult. And quite often he'll go for weeks and weeks and weeks without kicking a goal, but that's not the value necessarily that he should bring. But it has been pleasing to see him finish off some work. And the other one I'll point out is he hit up Zane Dersma with...
That was his kick, wasn't it?
Insane left foot around the corner, like 25 meter dink.
Just took a second to have a look.
Incredible. incredible
Fantastic.
skill. So, I was really happy with Costanti. I've been happy with his year, to be fair.
Yep. No, I completely agree. All right. Sean Atley Club Champ votes. I am a bit stuck this week, so I need you to help me work this out because your two highest disposal getters or three highest disposal getters in Fisher, Sheasel, Daniel, are they vote worthy? I would maybe consider Fisher for a vote with how I saw his game, but I don't know how you'll feel about that. Even a one vote for Fisher, I think he's in contention. Parker, I think, deserves some votes for his game, and then I think off the top of my head, maybe Curtis, just because he's doing really well. But throw me some names, mate, and let's figure this out.
Yeah, probably. I guess Curtis. I mean, is in the top three. I think our mids, like as we talked about, our mids, we don't want to get seduced by the numbers because like we've got quite passable numbers, but I don't think that necessarily meant
LDU is a tough one
fantastic.
too, because before the last quarter, I thought he was one of the best on the ground, and I think he went absolutely missing in the fourth. We didn't really talk about LDU, I guess, did we? But it was looking like one of his better games. 3 points he kicked as well, which would have been nice to get on the scoreboard. But, he was still very good for the game. I thought he really went missing in the middle, like a lot of people did. But he's got the big deal now. He needs to step up. That's his role. I don't know, but it feels maybe harsh leaving him out of those as well. What do you think on that?
I'd probably have him as 2 or 3, and then maybe Parker as 1. I wasn't as like enamored with Fisher's game. Like it wasn't bad. Like he would have been top 5, but it's kind of like what I've expected from Fisher for a long time. Like I think we know he can do that.
Okay, who do you think? So 3 votes, because I don't feel like if we give LDU 3 votes, do you think that's okay?
Oh, no, I'm supposed third on ground. Third on ground. So one vote.
Okay. If you were going to pick best on 3 votes, who is it? Because it's hard, isn't it? I don't feel like anyone deserves the 3 votes.
So that's a really hard game. As you say, before 3/4 time, it's probably LDU, but I'll probably go Parker then.
I was feeling Parker as well.
It's consistent across the game.
If we went Parker, Curtis, LDU.
That's probably it. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Right. Parker 3 votes, Curtis 2 votes, LDU 1 vote. I think that's the way to go. I don't feel good about it. It feels a bit gross, to be honest, but it is what it is. Feels like the Saturday night game against the D's and the Dons. It's a bit of a gross affair, to be honest. But,
yeah, it's yuck.
All right, moment of the game before we wrap this up. Do you have any moment of the game that you would like to point out? I think for me, it's probably maybe Zerha's goal. I thought that was really cool and clean, and it almost made it cooler that he went down holding his guts because he'd been, getting smashed all game. Constanti's was cool as well. I just the energy. Is there a moment in the game you loved?
Yeah, the other one I wanted to point out was Harry's goal because it came off the back of pressure. Like they were going to get away, and then we pressured, got the ball back in the forward 50, and he snapped that goal, which was pretty exciting. But yeah, probably Bull Zerha. That was a great finish as well.
The other one I'll throw out there is the fan in the crowd who took a mark and then sculled the rest of his beer on the sideline. Maybe he'll get the golden helmet moment of the game this week just because we faded away so much.
Yeah.
On the field, we'll give it to Bull's goal. Off the field, that bloke who sculled his beer. All right. Let's leave it there. This has been going long enough. I think you've got a shout out for a fan as well.
Yeah, so I was just at the comedy festival on Friday night and had a great time there. But a gentleman came up to me, Michael, and said he loved the Further North podcast and loved everything you did, Josh. So I had a quick chat to him about LDU, and he was very happy on Friday. Didn't have any beers. I was going to buy him a beer actually if he stuck around, but he was too keen to get back and see some comedy. I wasn't giving him enough comedy relief apparently, but. Yeah, Michael. Shout out to Michael, who I met on Friday. Good on you, dude. It was good meeting you.
An absolute legend. Yeah, North Melbourne gave me the comedy I needed in the last quarter. So I've been to my comedy festival in the Barossa Valley this week as well. So, look, thank you for coming on again, Chief. We'll get you back on soon. Thank you for your insight, your analysis. You're an absolute wizard when it comes to a footy break.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, mate.
We'll chat to you again soon.